What if nothing is the most misunderstood thing in existence? There is a word you have used your entire life without ever truly questioning what it means. A concept so familiar, so seemingly simple that it barely registers as something worth examining. You use it casually, confidently, as if its meaning were self-evident, as if everyone understood it the same way, as if it pointed to something real and well-defined. The word is nothing. And nothing, it turns out, may be the most misunderstood thing in all of existence. Because when you say nothing, what do you mean? An empty room still contains air, light, temperature, space itself. An empty space between two objects still contains distance, time, the invisible fields that govern how matter and energy behave. Even the vacuum of deep space, the closest thing to nothing that the physical universe offers, is not truly empty. It seethes with invisible activity, with quantum fluctuations, with a restless energy that modern physics calls the zero-point field. A background hum of existence that never stops, never quiets, never reaches absolute zero. In the entire observable universe, there is nowhere you can point and say, "There, that is truly nothing." And that should stop you in your tracks. Because if nothing cannot be found anywhere in physical reality, then what exactly are we talking about when we use the word? And if true nothingness does not exist, has never been observed, cannot be created, may be physically impossible, then what does that mean for the way we understand existence itself? This is not a question at the edges of physics. It is a question at the very center of it. Because the history of science is, in many ways, the history of discovering that what we thought was empty was actually full. Ancient thinkers believed that space was a void, a passive container in which objects moved. Then came the discovery of fields, invisible structures that permeate all of space, carrying forces, transmitting energy, shaping the behavior of everything that exists. The gravitational field, the electromagnetic field, the Higgs field, none of them are nothing. They are real, physical, measurable presences that fill every corner of the universe. And then came quantum mechanics, and with it, the discovery that changed everything we thought we knew about emptiness. At the quantum level, the vacuum is not a passive background. It is an arena of constant violent activity. Virtual particles, pairs of matter and antimatter, flicker in and out of existence billions of times per second, borrowing energy from the vacuum, existing for a fraction of an instant too brief to measure directly, and then annihilating each other and vanishing back into the field. This is not a theoretical prediction. It has been measured. The Casimir effect, a tiny but real force that appears between two uncharged metal plates placed very close together in a vacuum, is direct experimental evidence of the energy of empty space. The vacuum pushes back. It has structure. It has energy. It is not nothing. It is something pretending to be nothing. And this has consequences that reach far beyond physics. Because throughout human history, the concept of nothingness has carried enormous philosophical and spiritual weight. Many traditions have pointed to emptiness, to void, to silence, to the space between thoughts, as something sacred, something that is not the absence of reality, but its very ground, the Tao that cannot be named. The Buddhist concept of sunyata, emptiness, which does not mean that nothing exists, but that nothing exists independently, in isolation, with fixed and permanent identity. The stillness at the center of contemplative practice that feels, paradoxically, more real than anything that appears within it. For centuries, these ideas were dismissed as mysticism, but quantum physics is now arriving at something strangely similar from a completely different direction. Because if the vacuum is not empty, if what appears to be nothing is actually a vast, invisible field of potential energy, of virtual particles, of quantum fluctuations that can give rise to real particles under the right conditions, then emptiness is not the absence of existence. It is the womb of it, the place from which everything emerges. And if our own universe arose from a quantum fluctuation in a primordial vacuum, as we explored in the previous video, then everything that exists, every galaxy, every star, every atom, every thought you have ever had, emerged not from something, but from what appeared to be nothing, from a silence so complete it contained everything, from an emptiness so total it was indistinguishable from infinite potential. This is where physics and contemplative wisdom begin to speak the same language, because the mystic who sits in silence and discovers that the absence of thought is not empty, that awareness remains vivid and present even when the mind goes quiet, is pointing at something that the physicist measuring the Casimir force is also, in a different language, pointing at. The ground of existence is not a thing, it is not an object, not a substance, not a particle. It is more like a field, a presence that has no content of its own, and yet from which all content emerges. A nothing that is not nothing at all. And this brings us back, inevitably, to the question that has been running beneath every video in this series. Not what things are made of, not where they came from, but what is the nature of the space in which they appear? Because if physical space is not truly empty, and if the silence of the mind is not truly empty, then perhaps emptiness has never been what we thought it was. Perhaps what we call nothing is always already something. A background so fundamental, so prior to everything else that it cannot be seen directly, only recognized in the moment when everything else falls away. And that recognition, quiet, immediate, impossible to describe, may be the closest any of us ever gets to understanding what existence truly is. Not by adding more knowledge, but by seeing clearly what remains when everything known is set aside. So the next time you sit in silence, the next time your mind goes quiet for a moment, the next time you find yourself in a space between thoughts, between words, between one moment and the next, notice what is there, not what appears, but what remains. Because what you find in that space may not be nothing, it may be everything. And in the next video, we will explore one of the most staggering discoveries in modern astronomy, the fact that the universe is not only expanding, but accelerating. Something is pushing everything apart, faster and faster, and no one fully understands what it is. It has a name, dark energy, but a name is not an explanation, and what lies behind that name may change everything you think you know about the fate of the universe.